Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Historical Humans Reacts. And today, the day has finally come. Pigs have flown. The UK is barring the export of a rare medieval statue that was acquired by the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. But the Secretary of, Antiquities? Something like that? No,
Yeah,
Undersecretary of State for Arts and Heritage, Stephen Parkinson, has withheld an export license for the exceptionally rare 12th century carved statue that was carved out of a walrus tusk that was recently sold by Sotheby's auction in London to the Metropolitan Museum of Art last year for $2.5 million on the condition that it would be granted an export license. And the whole issue with this is that the piece had long term been on loan to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London for 40 years.
it had resided in a private collection during that time, but was loaned to the museum. What that means is that the museum is allowed to display it and talk about it and care for it, but the museum does not have any actual property rights to the piece. And the British government thinks it's very unfair that the Metropolitan Museum in America was able to, in a fully open vid to which the Victoria and Albert Museum could have attended, buy it.
Yeah, they got upset that an American institution had won this valuable and aesthetically significant piece of British heritage could possibly leave the aisle.
Yeah, yeah. The I guess the concept of actually bidding on it during the auction never occurred to any of these British institutions, which are now getting, I believe, another until about February or so.
February 6th, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. So they get another month to declare either that they have the money or that they intend to get the money. In which case, they have another 4 months to pay at least 2.5 million to the auction house in order to receive the artifact instead of the men.
Just ridiculous that they waited to the point until after it sold in a legitimate auction that they very much could have bid on, or they could have negotiated prior to going to bid, but they neglected that. They neglected their duties with that. And then after the fact, it wasn't until government intervention that they're like, oh, hey, maybe we can't send this overseas. And it's almost as though the British government has recently had discussions similarly about returning or having things sent overseas.
Yeah, and it's and Sotheby's, for all its reputation as it's a ritzy auction house for very expensive things. It's also an open auction house. There's nothing barring an established institution from bidding or attending or knowing what's being put up for auction.
Yeah, and a piece like this brings a lot of notoriety, a lot of attention, because it is both an exceptionally beautiful but an exceptionally rare piece of British history.
It's also an early ivory carving for British history. Is what one of the British archaeologists actually described as it's very early in terms of its artistic style and material.
And that it's a remarkable object both for its early date and its carving. And it was likely carved in York from a large chunk of walrus tusk and was one part of a larger tableau or potentially an altarpiece representing the Passion of Christ.
Whoa.
Yes.
Yeah.
You let Mel Gibson carve on it.
Oh, no.
The Victorian Albert Museum has actually responded to the publication's request for a comment. They have stated that they're aware of the ban, but they will not commit as to whether or not they will raise the money to to purchase it. Instead, decrying the fact that it had been on display with them for 40 years, as if that somehow gives them any property rights.
No, he actually, I think, almost doubles down and changes the stance, because it almost seems like the Victoria and Albert Museum really doesn't have an interest in purchasing this piece. Because he went on to say the only corresponding piece to the deposition is the carving of Judas at the Last Supper, which is in the Victorian Albert collection and was the justification for it remaining on loan for 40 years. The only reason it was on loan was so it could be paired with one of its partner pieces.
Yeah, and now the Americans are coming and taking it all away. It's I don't know. I read that and I look at we didn't really want it, but woe is me now that we don't have it.
Yeah, this is the British government stepping in, going, hold on, we don't want our culture being exported. And we here at Historical Humans tend to take a very sarcastic approach and a very comical oriented approach towards this, because the British are notorious for just barging into countries, taking their cultural heritage, and then refusing to repatriate it, refusing to give it back. So the fact that they're crying a foul and that they're kicking up so much dust over this is truly comical to me.
Every time I see the British complaining about repatriation or the exportation of British culture, I'm just reminded there's a comedy routine about some that a British comedian does, I believe, where he's talks about, like, imagine if someone stole something from you. You knew they stole it, but you couldn't get it back because they said, "Don't be selfish. We're still looking at it."
Oh yeah.
Which comedian says
there's a
that?
whole routine around that. So that's why I think every time the Britain starts complaining about this whole cultural rights thing.
Well, and then just to make matters really extra worse, this is also in light of the British Museum currently going through their whole issue where a bunch of artifacts were scrapped, stolen, melted down, fenced.
Yeah.
They're going through a huge issue where they have to go through their entire collection to make sure everything is accounted for and to get an inventory of the things that they don't have an inventory for anymore.
Yeah. Fortunately, it is our understanding that the Victoria and Albert Museum does not have the same issues as the British Museum at this time.
But American institutions like the Metropolitan, they don't have that. They just tend to buy stolen pieces to begin with.
It's like this is like literally the one legitimate purchase made by the Metropolitan Museum, and it's getting blocked because it's English.
Because it's too legitimate.
It's too English. It's like, you wonder why they steal things. The second they do anything legally, everyone's around them.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great point for us to wrap up on this episode. This has been a fun one.
Oh, yeah, that's very fun.
Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see you in the next one.